Thank you to Ramsey for holding things together today. We have Jay out here with us at Tom's Watch Bar, celebrating belatedly Kyle Draper's birthday, getting ready, of course.
Happy birthday, brother.
For the Kings
Thank
and
you, guys.
the Clippers.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you.
Our next guest, he's been saying for a while, he's been joining us for many weeks now, and he keeps coming back to, maybe the Kings and the Warriors end up in the play-in.
Right. He wants to see this.
Anthony Slater from The Athletic. Slates, thanks for joining us today. I know you're up in Portland. How are you feeling about that prediction right now? Kings and Warriors in the play-in. Where does that stand?
Well, your guy Harrison Barnes made it more likely the other night.
Yeah.
Dagger 3. Decently. I mean, Memphis just, and I think this is actually a good thing for the Kings, but Memphis is kind of looking weaker every day to where even if the Warriors fall to 7, they gave up 52 third quarter points, which was stunning. But it's just, to me, whoever's in that 7, and it's going to be somebody good, right? It's either going to be Clippers, Warriors, Minnesota, who you saw beat Memphis last night. I just think they're probably going to win the 7-8. Who knows? It's a one-game scenario. So I guess my point is, even if the Kings win the 9-10, I think they're probably going to get the Grizzlies in Memphis, would just be my guess at this point. And honestly, I don't hate the Kings in that game.
How about that, Drake?
All right, okay. He's feeling confident about our boys, huh? That's interesting.
And he's not one to sugarcoat the Kings' chances in anything.
Oh, no, we know that for sure. We know he keeps it real. He keeps it real.
By the way, it's more of a commentary on Memphis. If I'm being
I
honest,
got you.
Well, you know what's the issue there with Memphis in terms of on the court? Is it the celebration? Is it the new coach? Is it they're not very good? Why aren't you thinking Memphis can turn it around?
I mean, the jaw celebration thing's kind of wacky, and I was there the night, him and Buddy Hield are doing the freaking air guns at each other, but that's not, they just can't guard. I mean, I said 52 points in the third quarter last night. Part of the reason Taylor Jenkins got fired is that, they historically, back a couple years ago, I remember when they were the 2 seed, they were top 6 type defense in the league. Now they're in the 20s, particularly bad lately. So, you give up 52 points in the quarter, says plenty. I think Jaw's a problem, defensively. Jaren Jackson, previous defensive player of the year, he can't stay out of foul trouble, and he can't, plug erase all the mistakes that's going on around him. They had the, nice rookie Jalen Wells, obviously local kid in Sacramento, or Sonoma State. Sorry, he went to Sonoma State, but he's out for the year. Broke his wrist on that scary fall the other night, so they got even more problems.
But you're right. Jalen Wells is a Sacramento kid, so you're right on both fronts.
Kid. Yep.
Slates. On the opposite end of the spectrum from the Grizzlies, you got a Clippers team that, they're scoring more than 130 in 2 of the last 3 games. They've won 6 in a row. What, as far as you can tell, has gotten into this Clippers team?
Kawhi Leonard, a good Kawhi Leonard, a healthy Kawhi Leonard, added on to James Harden, who's had, I think, kind of an underrated season considering his name. I think people kind of threw him out for dead as far as superstars go. And he is not who he once was in his Houston prime, but he's still really good, kind of methodical point guard that fits what Ty Lue wants to do. Zubac, I would consider Zubac one of the most underrated players in the league. You talk to people, they say he's a top 5 type center. I think he's going to get all defense, probably first or second team all defense. He kind of walls off the rim. Ty Lue is one of the best in-game, strategic coaches in the league. And the fact that Kawhi Leonard is back and looking like himself, I talk to people that think they're one of the biggest threats to win the West. Wow. I don't know if I'd go that far. We'll see. Obviously they're in Sacramento tonight. What's interesting is I think that result matters more for the Warriors and the Nuggets than it does necessarily for the Kings. But there's going to be a lot of watchful eyes in the middle of the conference. Because if the Kings take down the Clippers, that could really shake things up.
Anthony Slater joining us here to Drive Guys, Sactown Sports 1140. With that being said, Slates, I'm hearing you say not necessarily bullish on Memphis. You're liking the Clippers. What about a team like Minnesota? I'm looking at the standings, and at first thought I'm thinking, man, the West has a lot of good teams. Do you think these are all good teams, or are these all flawed teams that we're seeing in this race 6, 7, 8 area?
Both, all of the above. I think good but flawed, not great, right? Good, not great. I think there's one great team in the conference, and they're the one that's up about 15 games on everybody else.
Yeah.
And, you know, Minnesota, it just depends like night to night. They do strange stuff. Before they just, you know, boat raced Memphis last night in Memphis, they lost at home to Milwaukee. They lost a 24-point lead in 10 minutes. They lost the fourth quarter 40-13. They got some kind of like Jekyll and Hyde type tendencies. You know, I like Anthony Edwards. I think Julius Randle's kind of hit and miss for them. Last night he looked really good, but I'm not sure he's been that great of a fit. You know, I'm not sure the Towns trade has gone as well as they would have liked. But, you know, we saw him in the playoffs last year. We saw the way Edwards raced his game in round 1, round 2. They swept the Suns. They took down the Nuggets, which felt pretty monumental when they did it last year. Like, sure, they could get hot. And, you know, if you're the Thunder sitting up at 1, you know, you're probably going to get somebody scary in 8. Although, again, I guess I'm feeling less scary about Memphis. But, yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of matchup dependent too, you know, like what type of team, styles make fights, right? In the playoffs, we've always seen that. And I think some teams are worse for others. I think it's just very matchup based.
Anthony Slater from The Athletic with us. I'm going to ask you, if you would, to speculate a little here. I know there's really no way of knowing this, but, you know, the Kings face a lot of potentially big decisions this offseason. To what extent do you think what happens between now and the end of their season will determine how big the moves they decide to make are? I mean, how much is what's still to come going to determine what they decide to do in the offseason, or do you think they pretty much have an idea?
I think they have an idea. I think that idea is based upon an expectation that they're probably not getting through the play-in. Mm-hmm. And to your question, if they shoot through the play-in, if they take down the Mavericks, if they go on the road and beat the Grizzlies, you know, let's say, and then go into Oklahoma City and, you know, put up a decent fight in round 1, that would probably change their mind, because that would tell us more, right? That probably meant Zach LaVine looked great, and, you know, DeRozan has a fountain of youth, and Doug Christie's like coaching his tail off to, you know, in 2 must-win games, and maybe has like a decent little series against the Thunder. That would probably change your mind and everybody's mind on how the season went. Just like you felt last year, especially we can call the Kings organization a little bit reactionary with their decision-making. Well, you felt like their loss to the Pelicans kind of like shattered some people's confidence a little bit heading into the summer, right? And that was just a one-game scenario. But I think decisions are likely to be made assuming that they're just one game and out, or they just don't get through the plan. But that could change. You know, it's 2 games. I think they'll probably be slightly favored in the first one against Dallas, and then you get a 1-game crack if you get through Dallas.
Anthony Slater joining us. Hey, Slate, there's this, you know, chatter outside the organization about whether or not, you know, the team should actually make the playoffs because of the draft pick situation, whether it conveys to Atlanta or not. Do you know if they've had any kind of internal discussions about what they want to do with that potential pick? Do they want to convey it as soon as possible? Are they okay with it maybe kicking over to next year?
I think you're seeing, you know, like they're going for it, right? They're not.
Yeah.
If they were trying to lose games, they just sit their veterans. They would have lost games the last few weeks. They'd be sitting down where Phoenix is, and they'd keep their pick. You know, so clearly the internal, mandate has been to go for the playoffs, because they got a lot of veterans, you know, especially guys that are, you know, wondering about their future, that I don't think would be very happy if they just laid down because they want to get the 12th pick in the draft. You know, and again, 12th pick, it can be substantial. You can get a main guy, but you mentioned it right there. I think sometimes with these protected picks, we forget that, okay, you can save it this year, but then you're giving it away next year.
Right.
So, you probably, I think, what does it go to? A top 10 protected the following year? I think the desire from the organization right now would be to, you know, slip in through the play-in, give the pick to Atlanta, keep the pick next year, and try to make the playoffs and have, you know, the 16th pick in the following draft. And the other thing I will say about this draft, there's a lot of hype about Cooper Flagg and some of the prospects up top, particularly Flagg. From what I heard, the mid to late lottery is not anything special compared to previous drafts, and the picks between the 10 and 20s are not that appealing. I know that even for a fact because the Warriors, you know, they put their own top 10 protected pick in the Jimmy Butler trade to Miami, partly because they had scouted that part of the draft and didn't think it was anything special.
Slates, when you look at the Kings' history of going through coaches as quickly as they do, were they just just ahead of the curve here, the way teams the way NBA teams are firing coaches. I mean, I call it Coach-ageddon. Is this going to change the way teams in the future think about whether or not they want to get rid of their head coach?
Maybe, if it works, right?
Yeah.
If it's Nuggets against the Grizzlies in the West Finals or something like that, maybe people will be like, "Oh, this help."
Yeah.
But I think those two circumstances were unique to themselves. And I'm sure you guys have read some of the aftermath. And the other thing is, Steve Kerr made an interesting point the other day. He just feels like with where the league is going financially and the billions just flooding into the league and the type of money that a lot of these new owners, Matt Ishbia, for example, in Phoenix, who keeps changing coaches every year and is probably about to change coaches again. He just feels like owners are more willing to, like, it doesn't matter what the price is. They'll just pay off the coach and go try to get a new one. And it's kind of leading to a quicker cycle and a quicker trigger on some of these coaches.
All right, Slates, we appreciate it. We look forward to talking to you here as the play-in season and the postseason gets started. So enjoy the game in Portland. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, Warriors Kings next Friday night.
There you go.
All right.
Thanks, Slates. Why are you shaking your head, Jay?
I don't know about that.
Jay don't want that, huh?
Nah,
he don't want that.
Give me Memphis and Minnesota.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah. I'm with you.
It'd be entertaining.
Right. It'd be good for the region, Hatfields and McCoys, the storylines and everything. But I'm actually kind of tired of the Warriors too.